Yo, what's up guys? Patrick here, welcome back. Moving on to the next example. This one's gonna be pretty tricky. There's gonna be a lot of algebra going on here. So we're given these two functions, f of x equals 4e to the x minus 5e to the negative x all over 2. And then we're given this function, 4e to the x plus 5e to the negative x, that's all over 2. And we gotta show that this function squared minus this function squared is gonna equal 20. So if we rewrite this, basically I'm going to work with this left side here. So what we're going to be doing is taking this entire function, g of x, all over 2. We're going to square it, and then we're going to subtract this function, 4e to the x. It's pretty much the same function, it's just the sign is negative here instead of positive. But everything else is the same. And then we're going to square that. So we got to try to simplify this algebraically, make it equal to 20. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to distribute this exponent to the numerator and denominator. So just in general, let's review some exponent laws. If I got a over b to the power of x, that's like a to the power of x over b to the power of x. And this a and b, they could be single variables. They could be entire expressions like we have here. Could be anything. The point is that the numerator goes to that power, the denominator goes to that power. So that's exactly what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to take these expressions, square them, and then the 2 gets squared. And then over here, I'm going to take this expression, I'm going to square it, and then the 2 gets squared as well. And notice 2 to the power 2 in both these cases is 4. Right, so starting to look a little bit better. And to make this even more simple, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to factor out a 1 over 4 from both of these expressions. Because notice we got 4 in the denominator for both. And so I feel like doing that is going to make things easier because then we're not really going to work with fractions. We're just going to have this fraction on the outside, and then we can multiply it in at the end. Okay, so this square bracket remaining, there's still going to be a lot of algebra here. Okay, so that's still not going to be a walk in the park, but I just feel like working with this square bracket is easier than working with all this. After we take the 1 over 4 out, we have less fractions to worry about. Now, at this point, what you can do is we're going to have to FOIL out this bracket. So this bracket times itself again because we got the power to the 2. Same thing here, FOIL out this bracket. But before doing that, notice that we're working with e to the power of x a lot. We got e to the power of x here, we got e to the power of x, then we got e to the power of negative x, e to the power of negative x. So what I'm going to do, because of that, because this e to the power of x is coming up all the time, I'm going to make a substitution of a new variable. I'm going to let m equal e to the power of x. So I'm going to work with m instead. I feel like the algebra is going to be more simple, and then if I have to, I'll bring back that e to the x at the end. And in fact, if we do this right, we won't have to bring back that e to the x because we're trying to get to 20. And so all of the e to the x's, all of the m's should cancel out. Now you don't necessarily have to do this here. You can work with this e to the x. I just feel like it's going to be a lot more complex. It's going to be a lot more messy. So we could sub in an m here, sub in an m here, but notice this is e to the negative x, this is e to the negative x. So I'm going to actually rewrite these expressions as 5 over e to the x. I'm going to bring that e to the negative x to the denominator and it becomes positive. And now I could sub in m here, m here, m here, m there. So I'm going to erase this. I'm going to continue this up here. So what do we got? We got 1 over 4. And now in this square bracket, I'm going to be left with 4m plus 5 over m. And that's going to be squared, but instead of writing squared, I'm just going to write the 2 brackets out. Just because we're going to FOIL them out. And I just feel like showing it with the two brackets is going to be easier for the next expression. And then we're going to be subtracting 4e to the, or sorry, we got rid of the e. So 4m minus 5 over m. And then 4m minus 5 over m, like that. I'm going to erase this for now. And then we're going to close that bracket. Right, so we got to do all of this algebra over here. So let's go through it step by step. So we'd have 4m times 4m, which would give us 16m squared. Then we got 4m times 5 over m. Notice the m's would cancel out. We'd end up with 20. Right, 4m times 5 over m. The m's cancel out. We're left with 20. And then here, notice we're left with 20. Again, 5 over m times 4m is 20. And then this times that, it would be 25 over m squared. Like that. Right, so when we FOIL out these two brackets, this is what we would end up with. And then we're going to be subtracting, let's just put a big square or circle bracket. We got to FOIL out all of this here. So same thing, 16m squared minus 20 plus 25 over m squared. Like that, right? When we FOIL everything out, we would end up with this, and we're subtracting that whole thing. So we're subtracting that whole bracket right there. And now notice what's going to happen. Well, we got to distribute this negative inside this bracket. So all of these signs are going to change. So notice the 16m squared, that's going to cancel out. The 25 over m squared, that's going to cancel out with that because that's going to turn into a negative, positive, minus, nets out to 0. And then we would end up with positive 20, positive 20. So notice we'll have 20 plus 20 plus 20 plus 20. So we would end up with 1 over 4 times 80, which would give us 20. Which is what we were trying to go for. Right? So that's how you do that question. So it's actually not too bad, especially when you do that substitution for that e to the x. Now, again, you didn't necessarily have to. So if we kept it, I'll just kind of show you the beginning of the process. Right, if you were to FOIL this out, you would end up with what? 16 e to the x times e to the x. You can add the exponents because they have the same base, so we'd have 2x. And then 4e to the x times 5e to the x, the e to the x's would cancel out, and again, you'd end up with 20. Then you'd have 20 plus 25 over e to the 2x. So that's what this would be if you kept those e to the x's. So it's not too bad. Again, this and this are going to cancel out over here, and you're still going to end up with 80 in that bracket. Just personally, I decided to sub in that m. So whichever way you do it, 20 is your final answer.